Iran's nuclear and hegemonic aspirations are perhaps the most critical issues confronting this generation and the next. And so I came to the conclusion that I needed to personally oppose the deal, despite the criticism I knew I would and have received from many friends and colleagues and congregants as a result. This deal simply does not achieve what it set out to do as far as dismantling Iran's nuclear program and eliminating their pathway to a nuclear bomb. At best, it delays that taking place, at best. But it wasn't easy coming to that conclusion, nor was it easy for me to decide that I would state my personal position publicly. You see, in addition to being a Reform rabbi and a proud Zionist, I'm also a liberal Democrat. This deal was negotiated, and it's important to remember that it was a negotiation. It was negotiated by a Democratic president, and one who during his time in office has done some important things to enhance the security of the Jewish state. We, all reasonable people want diplomacy to succeed. After all, a peaceful solution to the major challenge of Iran's nuclear program is in both America's and Israel's best interests. And a diplomatic solution is in keeping with my understanding of Jewish values. But a deal that emboldens the Iranian regime, that lifts all but immediately all of the sanctions, that all but immediately infuses their economy with a financial windfall of epic proportions, that was not, nor is it, a deal I can support. And so I came to the conclusion that I, as an individual, would speak up. And there's another reason I realized that I needed to speak. I cannot, in good conscience, stand by and allow Israel to become yet another partisan wedge issue without trying to do something about it. The U.S.-Israel relationship, it's far, far too important for that. It was immediately clear that some of the debate would fall along partisan lines. And so I decided that as a liberal Democrat and a Reform rabbi, I would do my small part to help keep this issue and the U.S.-Israel relationship bipartisan and within our Jewish community cross-denominational. The ad hominem attacks from either side, they benefit no one. We in the pro-Israel community, we're better than that. This is, as AIPAC has made clear, a policy debate. And it has been our democratic process in action. It's something we should be proud of. Sweeping generalizations and negative attacks, they don't help us make this important point. Facts do.
I've spent a lot of time thinking about this Iran deal. And like most of my peers, I want to be optimistic about the future, but this flawed deal offers little hope. What concerns me most is that it sets back Iran's nuclear program for just a mere 15 years. And that's only if Iran doesn't cheat. And ladies and gentlemen, let's be honest, history has shown us time and again that Iran is a serial cheater when it comes to its international commitments. But let's assume, best case scenario, they don't cheat. What is 15 years? The year 2030 will be here in a blink of an eye. It is almost as far away from today as today is from 9/11. In the year 2030, I hope I'll be starting a family and building my career. But I also know that in 15 years, my generation and I will be dealing with the consequences that are by the decisions that are being made today, decisions made by each and every one of you, decisions made by Senator Booker, and decisions made by the U.S. Congress. I wrote my remarks last night, and this is how I was going to conclude. Senator Booker, had I been old enough last November, I would have voted for you. And I would have voted for you because of your moral clarity and your integrity. No matter what the final vote next week is, your vote matters. Senator Booker, I was also going to remind you that this is the vote of a generation and I was going to urge you to do the right thing by voting against the deal. So when I turn 30, I will be living in a world that is at least as safe and secure than it is today. Senator Booker, all of this still stands, but it deeply saddens me how you landed on this critical issue. Thank you.
We stood up this organization when the president gave his speech at American University, when he said, if you're against this deal, you're either a warmonger, an ideologue, or illogical. The last people that want to go to war are your country's volunteer military. We train to prevent war, and when we go to war, we fight to win wars. This deal does nothing but empower an enemy. The argument that it's either this or war is a false one, because it's this deal, and then it's war with a more empowered, a better equipped, a better funded enemy with the support of two of the signatories in the JCPOA, Russia and China. We got a big problem with that. We know this enemy very well. And when we hear senators say, well, Iran may, Iran could, Iran should, we hope, we can say Iran has, Iran is, and Iran will, because we know this enemy very well.
The breath of Iran is out to burn us alive. They want to kill us. That's it. They did it to me. 3,500 degrees hit me in my head and my face, cut me in half in the left corner of my temple down through my jaw, took my gunner's legs and took the top of my truck commander's head off, and then blew my buddy out of the back seat and laid him in the street. I can still tell you what it smells like inside that vehicle to this very day. It'll never go away. The burning flesh, the burning hair. I can still hear my voice in the background. I didn't know I was wailing in pain because everything stopped, time stopped. Well, now you have the time. You have that time. You have that time to help us turn this thing around. The world is with us. We just need to inspire them and turn them into force multipliers. We need to get out there and volunteer and do things. $150 billion is going to Iran in one day. That doubles their economy in one day. That money goes to the very man who killed me and my friends. Can you wear the uniform with us? Can you stand up for my buddies who no longer have a voice because they gave you that very seat you're sitting in now and the voice that you have? You have to do something. You have to use the freedoms we gave you. My friends in the military and the special forces, they can't say a word right now. But they're behind us all the way. The military is behind us all the way. I can tell you that. The politicians aren't listening to the military. They're not listening to the intelligence officers, like you just heard Mike Pregent say. We know this enemy. This enemy killed me and my friends. I died 3 times, yeah. Spent 4.5 years at Walter Reed getting rebuilt to look this beautiful. Thank you. I really can't do this without you. I can't. You got to join the organizations around here. You got to help AIPAC. You got to help us. You got to help everybody. And we got to pull together. One team, one fight. That's it. Christian, Jew, American, Hindu, Muslim, all together, one fight.
Now, tonight, one of the things we had hoped to do was appeal to Senator Cory Booker to oppose this deal. He really disappointed all of us, and I speak as an admirer, a friend of Senator Booker's. If you read, it's not just that he came out in support of the deal. If you read the statement he put out, it's so much like so many other Democratic senators lately who've come out for the deal. It seems more negative than positive, and yet it ends up with with support of the deal. I haven't yet talked to a member of the U.S. Senate who has said to me this is a great deal. I haven't even talked to a member of the U.S. Senate who said this is a very good deal. The most they will say is that it's the best deal that we could have gotten. But when you're dealing, as has been documented tonight, with one of the most radical countries in the world, and you're talking about whether or not they're going to have the most dangerous weapons in the world, you can't settle for something that you think is better than we might have gotten. So I'm disappointed in Cory Booker tonight. I'll tell you part of why I'm disappointed. Cory's whole life is about excellence. He's held himself to a high standard. He's worked very hard to do the best, and he's worked very hard to do the best for people around him. And he's settled for a lot less than the best in supporting this deal today. I will be very honest with you at this point, and I want to speak real briefly for a moment as a lifelong Democrat. You probably remember in 2006 I ran as an independent, but that wasn't my first choice. Remember, I lost the primary that year. And thankfully, as an independent, a lot of independents, Republicans, and some Democrats reelected me in Connecticut, but I remained a Democrat. So there you go. I joined the Democratic Party of President John F. Kennedy. It was a party that believed you could be progressive on social issues and tough and muscular on defense and foreign policy. The Kennedy inaugural it was the speech, in addition to a lot of stuff I got from my rabbis growing up, Rabbi, about, doing tikkun olam and all of that, that inspired me into public service. And there's a memorable line in that speech where President Kennedy says, "We will pay any price, bear any burden, support any friend, oppose any foe, to guarantee the survival and success of liberty." Well, this deal turns that upside down. In this deal, America somehow is supporting our foe, opposing our friends, and guaranteeing the success and survival of one of the most non-democratic, tyrannical regimes in the world today. How can my fellow Democrats vote for such a deal? I know everything in Washington is partisan these days, but this shouldn't be. I'm grateful to the Republicans who are supporting the deal. I'm actually heartbroken and feel, in some sense, abandoned by the Democratic Party. How could only two senators, one your own Bob Menendez, God bless him, strong, principled, a great senator, and of course Chuck Schumer is going to be the next Democratic leader of the United States Senate. But can it possibly be so that on the merits, only two Democratic senators would vote for it? I'm embarrassed, and I do feel personally abandoned. It leaves a scar, which will take a while to heal. I want to tell you that it wasn't always so partisan in Congress when it came to Iran. I was in the Senate 24 years. In my last 20 years, I spent a lot of time working on economic sanctions against Iran. They all passed with overwhelming bipartisan majorities. And it was very obvious what every one of us, Republican, Democrat, whatever, had in mind. That we were going to put this economic pressure on Iran, and it was all, as I think Michael said, not to go to war, but in fact to avoid war, to come to a diplomatic settlement, a negotiation, which would end up in a very logical and simple, mutually beneficial deal. We take the economic sanctions off of Iran, which are crippling their economy, and they end their nuclear weapons program. And what's the result of this negotiation and this agreement? We end our economic sanctions against Iran, and they get to have nuclear weapons. I mean, it is the world turned upside down. This agreement or war, in my opinion, I hope I'm wrong, because this agreement looks like it's going to be implemented. This agreement actually has a much higher probability of causing another war in the Middle East than opposing this agreement. Don't you agree? And why do I say that? Because some of this $150 billion that's been spoken about is definitely going to go to Iran, to their terrorist proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis in Yemen, and other extremist groups throughout the Arab world. They're going to use that money to buy more sophisticated weapons and carry out more devastating attacks on Israel and on the Arab countries. And Israel and the Arab countries are going to respond militarily. And to me, that means the probability of war in the Middle East, not as a result of this deal. I think that's more possible. I don't want to, you've heard about the deal, you know about it. I want to talk about where we are, because there's something more we can do, even though it's clear now that there are enough votes to sustain President Obama's veto. And this has to do with Senate procedure. Let me see if I can do this without putting everybody to sleep. It's all about the filibuster. And here's the basic point. Do the Democrats in the Senate feel that they're so obliged to the White House, to the leadership, that they've got to march in partisan lockstep to deny their colleagues and the country a real vote on this agreement? Or will they stand up and say, even though I'm for the agreement, our colleagues deserve to vote against it if that's the way they feel? In other words, will they support a filibuster, or will they stand up and vote against a filibuster? And let me just give you a little bit brief context on why this matters. I think Elon, who will be, I want to be the first to predict this, a United States Senator one day. And I hope I'm still around to be there when that happens. The Constitution of the United States, I mean, this idea of filibustering is contrary to the Constitution, contrary to the Corker-Cardin legislation, which just passed a few months ago, and contrary to basic rules of fairness. Constitution shares authority over foreign policy between the President and Congress. The founders of our country didn't want the President to have excessive unilateral authority over foreign policy. Why? Because they had some bad experiences with the King of England as he used that authority unilaterally. So, for instance, they put in the Constitution the requirement that any international agreement, which they called a treaty, couldn't go into effect unless 2/3 of the members of the U.S. Senate voted to advise and consent that it would be all right. That was what they thought. Let's go to the Corker-Cardin legislation. Let me just come back to that. President Obama used the authority that he does have, because the Constitution doesn't define what a treaty is. And the President has authority sustained by court decisions over the decades to determine whether an international agreement is a treaty or just an executive agreement. He naturally decided to call this an executive agreement, and that totally flipped what had to be achieved in Congress. If he had called it a treaty, the White House would have needed to get 2/3 to ratify the treaty. By calling it an executive agreement, we who oppose it had to get 2/3 to oppose it. But then came the Corker-Cardin legislation, where Congress insisted by law, which the President himself signed, and it passed the Senate 99-1, that they had to have a vote on this agreement. It couldn't just be put into effect by the President as an executive agreement. So that at least requires 51 votes. So now we went down from 67, which it could have been if it had been declared a treaty. And I think this agreement is more consequential than any treaty I voted on in the 24 years I was in the United States Senate. So it went from 67 for that down to 51, a majority under the Corker-Cardin legislation. Now, they're intent, apparently, on filibustering this, which would mean that people who agree with us that this is a dangerous agreement and want to support a motion to reject it have to get 60 votes to even take it up in the Senate. And that means that the other side only has to get 41 senators, so you can't get to 60. So we've gone from a requirement of 67 down to 51 to 41. This is unfair, and in my opinion, it's unwise. It's unwise because, as every poll has shown since this agreement was announced in the middle of July, the high point in public opinion for this Iran nuclear agreement was on the day it was announced. Because every day since then, as the American people have learned about it, the 24-day minimum to see whether they're cheating in the first 10 or 15 years, the secret site agreement, which seems to allow them to self-inspect at one of their most dangerous sites, the money to the terrorists, all the rest. The public now in the recent polls, 55, 60% against, 25, 30% for. In the face of that public opinion, to prohibit the members of the Senate from voting on a motion to reject is just plain wrong, and it is unwise. It will convince the public once again that they can't trust people in Washington and that too much is done on a partisan basis and not enough based on what's good for our country. The reality is that that's the big battle remaining for us. And tonight, I want to appeal to Senator Cory Booker. He's a fair man. I think he made a mistake today. But Cory, at least give the majority that exists in the Senate. We know there are 56 senators, a clear majority, who want to vote against this agreement. Let them have that right. President then vetoes, and obviously his veto is sustained. That's what we all need to do now. We need to call Cory. We need to call all the Democratic senators, including those who have said they will support the agreement. And in addition to being fair, it's important because then we will have this result. A majority of members of both houses of Congress will have reflected the opinion of a majority of the people of the United States of America, that this is a bad deal for America. To me, that will send a message, first, to our allies in Israel and the Arab world, that this agreement draws very mixed reactions in the United States of America. And right now, they don't know whether they can rely on us anymore. And that's not good for the stability of the Middle East. The second thing it will do is send a message to Iran that we're not, and I'm afraid they came away from the negotiations thinking, hey, Ayatollah Khamenei said this. America wants this agreement more than we, Iran, want it. They need it more than we need it. If we don't have the right to have our senators get up and vote to reject this agreement, even though we know the president's going to veto it, I'm afraid that the mullahs in Iran will determine that really Congress, not just the president, but Congress, not just the administration, but Congress really wants a deal more than they do, and they don't have to worry about what they do from now on, including carrying out the agreement. So this is not the battle we wanted to be fighting now, but that's where we are, and that's what we are still capable of doing. There's a great Churchill quote from the Second World War, which is, this is not the beginning of the end. This is only the end of the beginning. This agreement will go into effect, but our fight to stop Iran from actually getting nuclear weapons has just begun, right? We're in this for the long haul. We're going to ask Congress to renew the Iran Sanctions Act, so there'll be the latitude, right, to reimpose sanctions. for violations of human rights, for the kind of support of terrorism that they regularly give, and also for what will undoubtedly be violations of the promises they made in this understanding. We want to ask Congress to monitor the International Atomic Energy Agency's inspections of the Iran's compliance with this agreement. And we want to do everything we can to create an environment in which American businesses conclude that it's still not smart business to go back into Iran and do business, because sanctions will continue to be imposed for other reasons. Friends, I come to you inspired that you came out tonight. Thank you for being willing to spend time serving a cause larger than yourselves, which is the security of America, the security of Israel, the future of our children. And again, I end with Churchill. And remember, he said, never, never, never give up. And the spirit I feel in this room, what I feel in my heart, what I know as part of AIPAC, what I feel in the Vets Against the Deal, who put their lives on the line for us and know that they suffered at the hands of this terrible regime in Iran. You and I are never, never, never going to give up, and therefore Iran, I promise you, will never get nuclear weapons. Thank you very much.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS, the Jewish Broadcasting Service, with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the JBS homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to Jim, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.